Om Aganda Timarandasya Ganajana Shivakaya Chakshur Umrisamyena Tajma Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him.
Krishna Kirtana Bhanana Tanapano.
Hare Krishna. Welcome back to this video series on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translated by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are currently on Chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. First, Krishna explains attaining knowledge through the disciplic succession. Then, after successfully explaining his own appearance and mission, the Lord explains his devotional service as the goal of all sacrifices. Next, Krishna explains the soul's relationship with him as his eternal part and parcel, which must be learned by approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Chapter 4 ends with Krishna glorifying transcendental knowledge and requesting Arjuna to arm himself with this knowledge which burns all sinful reactions to ashes. Text number 1. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivishvan, and Vivishvan instructed it to. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivishvan, and Vivishvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, therefore the science as it appears to be lost. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivishvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? The Blessed Lord said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Although I am unborn, and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all sentient beings, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I have bent myself millennium after millennium. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take its birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. All of them, as they surrender unto me, I reward accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Men in this world desire success and fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, they get results from fruitive work in this world. Krishna begins this 4th chapter telling Arjuna how he also instructed Vivishvan, the Bhagavad Gita, over 100 million years ago. Arjuna immediately responds with a question. Vivishvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He remembers all his pastimes, no matter how old they are or where they take place. And in his first purport of this chapter, Srila Prabhupada explains how important it is for the heads of state to understand and apply transcendental knowledge. The kings of all planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of the Bhagavad Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge and eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. We can understand that if the leaders of society are sober and clear-headed, they can understand the nature of the soul, and in turn, they can keep the society from becoming a cat and dog society. Krishna tells Arjuna that in time, the succession of knowledge coming down from the Bhagavad Gita was broken. Krishna now is speaking the Gita again to Arjuna, who is Krishna's devotee, is qualified to understand the transcendental mystery of this science. In the next verses, Krishna explains his transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and the reason for his periodic descents to this material world. He comes to re-establish Dharma, or religious principles, and to annihilate miscreants. One who understands the transcendental nature of his appearance and activities attains liberation. For those who take refuge in him, they are purified by such knowledge and achieve love for him. Krishna reciprocates with the jivas in accordance to their degree of surrender unto him. Only a devotee can understand Krishna as he is. Others cannot, because one's relationship with Krishna is rahasya, or secret, confidential and mysterious. Maya has covered the living entity's real identity, and Krishna has no inclination to remove the covering of anyone other than those who sincerely approach the Lord. Krishna also describes the results of realizing transcendental knowledge. A devotee achieves liberation and never has to take birth again in this material world. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that such a devotee becomes free from matter even before leaving this body. Text 13. According to the three modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them, the four divisions of human society were created by me, and although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me does not become entangled in the fruit of reactions of work. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding, and so attained liberation. Therefore, as the ancients, you should perform your duty in this divine consciousness. Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all sins. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. One who sees inaction in action, action in inaction, is intelligent among men. He is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every act is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker whose fruit of action is burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruit of action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reaction. He who is satisfied with gain which comes of his own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady both in success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consumption is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Some of them sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of the controlled mind, and others sacrifice the objects of the senses, such as sound, in the fire of sacrifice. Those who are interested in self-realization in terms of mind and sense control offer the functions of all senses as well as the vital force, breath, as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. There are others who, enlightened by sacrificing their material possessions and severe austerities, take strict vows and practice the yoga of eightfold mysticism, and others study the Vedas for the advancement of transcendental knowledge. And there are even others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance. They practice stopping the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Some of them, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reaction, and having tasted the nectar of the remnants of such sacrifice, they go to the supreme, eternal atmosphere. Conditioned souls, bound by their independent desires for pleasure, try to act based on those desires. Their attempts cause the modes of material nature to react with results in activity and its reactions. Krishna's own actions are different. Krishna engages in many activities, but while acting, he is materially aloof and materially desireless, because his activities are within the internal energy and are free from the modes of material nature. Because his work is material desireless, no reactions attach themselves to his work. When the jiva understands these facts about Krishna and applies this transcendental knowledge to his own work and becomes a servant of Krishna, he also becomes aloof from the material world of action and reaction. Text 13 mentions the 4 divisions of human society that was created by Krishna in this material world. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada explains these 4 divisions. The Lord is the creator of everything. Everything is born of him. Everything is sustained by him. And everything after annihilation rests in him. He is therefore the creator of the 4 divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmins, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called Vaishyas, are situated in mixed modes of passion and ignorance, and the Sudras, or laborer class, are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of his creating the 4 divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions, because he is not one of the conditioned souls, a section whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada also comments, only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness, because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratification. It is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of his work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has actually learned who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Verse 16 through 24, in pursuance of Krishna's description of his own work, Krishna will explain how work, karma, can be seen as an activity, akarma. Arjuna previously said he wished to leave the battlefield and avoid the results of his karma. Like a jnani through inactivity, Krishna will show him that no karma occurs to one who works in transcendental knowledge, and that properly performed karma can thus be seen as non-different from the process of jnana. Krishna will later explain that only those who are less intelligent worship demigods, as if they were supreme or independently able to supply life's necessities. Demigods are empowered by Krishna to fulfill a worshipper's desires. Demigod worship will be discussed in more detail in chapters 7 and 9. Text 31. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of next? All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice of knowledge is greater than the sacrifice of material possessions. O son of Pritha, after all, the sacrifice of work culminates in transcendental knowledge. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but a part of me, and that they are in me and are mine. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross the ocean of miseries. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all the reactions of material activities. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due course of time. A faithful man who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses quickly attains the supreme peace. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. Therefore, one who has renounced the fruits of his actions, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is situated firmly in the self, is not bound by works, O conqueror of riches. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bart, stand and fight. Human life is meant for advancing in spiritual life, and the process of advancing is sacrifice. A man works and achieves results as the fruits of his work, and should offer at least some of those results in sacrifice to Vishnu. One who makes no offering, money, ability, intelligence, mind, or body, simply lives selfishly, for he is not advanced toward the supreme objective. Modern man attempts to find happiness without performing sacrifice. His sense enjoyment may increase, but happiness eludes him, being devoid of transcendental knowledge and condemned as a thief by the law of karma. He also suffers in his next life. Srila Prabhupada summarizes this chapter in the last purport to text 42. The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatana Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. This yoga has two divisions of sacrificial actions. One is called sacrifice of one's material possession, and the other is called knowledge of the self, which is pure spiritual activity. If sacrifice of one's material possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, then such sacrifice becomes material. but one who performs such sacrifices with a spiritual objective or in devotional service makes a perfect sacrifice. When we come to the spiritual activities, we find that these are also divided into two, namely, understanding of one's own self or one's constitutional position, and the truth regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who follows the path of the Bhagavad Gita as it is can very easily understand these two important divisions of spiritual knowledge. For him, there is no difficulty in obtaining perfect knowledge for the self as part and parcel of the Lord. And such understanding is beneficial, for such a person can easily understand the transcendental activities of the Lord. In the beginning of this chapter, the transcendental activities of the Lord were discussed by the Supreme Lord Himself. One who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless and is to be considered to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded to him by the Lord. In spite of such instructions, one who does not understand the real nature of the Lord as the eternal, blissful, all-knowing personality of Godhead is certainly fool number one. One is therefore advised to study Bhagavad Gita or any other scripture under a bona fide spiritual master with service and surrender. A bona fide spiritual master is in a disciplic succession from the time eternal, and he does not deviate at all from the instructions of the Supreme Lord as they were imparted millions of years ago to the Sun God, and from whom the instructions of Bhagavad Gita have come down to the earthly kingdom. One should therefore follow the path of the Bhagavad Gita as it is, expressed in the Gita itself, and beware of self-interested people who are only after their own personal benefit and who deviate others from the actual path. The Lord is definitely the Supreme Person, and His activities are transcendental. One understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of the Bhagavad Gita. Now Arjuna, sitting on his chariot, is determined not to fight. Krishna wants him to stand, fixed in transcendental knowledge, detached from all results, and fight. Work and knowledge combined will free Arjuna from the sinful reactions he fears. That ends this episode. Thank you for watching. Hope you will return when we will discuss Chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Bande Rupa Sanatana Raghujaga Sri Jiva Gopalaku Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tana Param Primam Tambani Vira Dhira Jana Priya Kana Nima Sajam Pujito Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tana Param